Alright boys, we're back. It took me a minute, but now we're moving on with the timeline. A lot of people overlook the 6-year gap between Super Mario 64 and Sunshine, believing that Nintendo was somewhat dormant throughout this period. If you look up the Super Mario games in order, you'll find that it's actually one of the largest breaks in the release of mainline Mario games ever, with most games only being about 2 or 4 years apart. So what were they doing? Well, I can only guess that after Super Mario RPG inspired many of the highly acclaimed features in Mario 64, they probably felt like there was more to learn and wanted another crack at creating a Mario RPG game, hence Paper Mario, which is in my opinion one of the most creative and well-made games ever to take a risk in changing its genre to date. Nintendo actually got their start making playing cards, which explains how they came up with the idea of putting Mario in a paper cutout world. Of all possible stylizations, this is perhaps one of my most favourite, instilling a sense of whimsical charm that's easy to appreciate. Games like this will always look good, even as our hardware becomes more sophisticated because generally, new technology can't improve upon it. Current generation games development has a sharp focus on making games look more realistic, boasting smoother animation work. But with Paper Mario, the design is supposed to be rustic. It's fairly inexhaustive to achieve, and so limitations of the time period posed less of a constant hindrance on its development. Nintendo had room here to be more creative in other ways. I like how there's actually depth, because look, I can jump here and go up behind them, jump here and go in front of it, or jump here and I hit it. Like the transitions into the indoor spaces and the scenic diversity, which is easily on par with other big names in the Mario franchise. Something that continued to impress me throughout the gameplay were the many customized fighting backgrounds unique to each setting. I think this was definitely worth the effort as it made the game feel more varied. If we imagine, for example, fighting in the same space since the beginning of the game, that would have very quickly become visually repetitive and may have caused me to lose interest over time, which would have really tarnished the turn-based combat experience. Speaking of combat, Mario's turn-based fighting system is simple and direct. Initially, the player need only worry about a couple of moves, with the core being just 2 different attacks, hammer and jump. There is absolutely no fat on this system, with every move having obvious effects. Take for example, this spike-topped enemy variant. Probably best not to jump on that. Or perhaps this airborne enemy. You can't reach him with the hammer, so let's jump up there and knock him down. It's actually a really understated balance to get right, with its effectiveness depending almost entirely on the explicit circumstances for when a particular move should be used. I believe it to be a great contributing factor as to why most people will prefer to use one of the core elemental Pokemon variants, as there's very little confusion as to when each type should be used. With an emphasized level of simplicity, there's normally much less depth in later gameplay, but I feel that Paper Mario expands on its combat systems adequately enough throughout the story to keep things relatively fresh. Badges will offer you unique and upgraded moves, your companions will provide another layer of depth, helping you to gain the upper hand in unfavorable matchups, and the star moves are also a nice addition, which for the most part I just mainly used Restore and Smooch as they help to maintain your stats. I think this game has a bit of an issue with its identity. 2001 was smack bang in the middle of that rivalry between Nintendo and Sega. By this point, Nintendo was made well aware of Sonic, and specifically, his appeal to the teenage youth of the new century. This can explain some of the cornier expressions of certain characters as they adapted a more modern use of vocabulary, which nowadays stands out like a sore thumb. Sorry to have kept you waiting, Mario. It's okay, Grandpa. We're just rapping with Mario. What the fuck? Even the end fight animation looks eerily reminiscent to me of Sonic the Hedgehog. On the one hand, you have these childlike exchanges featuring the odd bit of good humour, which I much appreciated, but then this is offset by the at times quite elaborate and specific puzzle sequences. There were lots of points where I felt like if I was just a 10-year-old kid playing this game in the early 2000s, I would most likely have gotten confused by now and would struggle to progress through the game. You've not got the same quality of life features of modern games, such as accessible fast travel, and outside of the region map, you have to rely on your memory for where various important places are. Toad Town itself has about 5 different areas which got especially tedious to run through during the Shy Guy Toy Box chapter. This part of the game was really well inspired, so it was a bit of a shame that you had to constantly exit and re-enter the level, collecting different quest items and replenishing your health. These older games have always been a bit vague and less immediate to figure out when compared to most modern releases. That's why back in the day, you used to use game guides like Nintendo Power to uncover the hidden secrets. I have a lot of mixed feelings about Paper Mario. While I think it's a great example of how turn-based games can be fun if made properly, I think that the experience begins to spoil at about the halfway point. Paper Mario features a wide variety of characters and unique ideas that were for its time uncommon. However, now when compared to modern standards, it's everything that you'd expect from a turn-based RPG, leaving just its art style and sense of humour as the game's more notable, timeless features.